All right. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Natalie Horine. I'm here with Maria Chowdhury today. And I might have said your last name just a little bit wrong, but as the rest of our viewers and all of our podcasts and our listeners, they know that we're doing the Ignite Live Health and Wellness, so that way we can really spread information to all of our community here in the Northwest Arkansas territory and beyond, for that matter, where we can really just empower people, empower women, empower men, empower children in health, wellness, and fitness and spirituality worlds, so that way we can really allow people to be able to start to embody the natural essence that they have, the magical powers that they have, to allow their bodies to be uplifted and really just get in touch and in tune with themselves naturally. And no better way than to really introduce our guest that we have here today, so she can talk about that, specifically talking about midwifery and with women and women who are bearing children and birthing children and bringing life into this world. And Ben, you're not like you're not supposed to listen to this, because you are very much part of this amazing experience as well. So without further ado, let's go into this and give you a little bit of information about Maria. So Maria's been a practicing midwife for over 17 years. So she's currently not attending live births or attending births right now, because she really is taking this opportunity to really spread her arms and spread her reach, because she has so much wisdom and so much knowledge that she wants to be able to share with more people. And in order to do that, we know that the best place to do this is an online means, and be able to spread that education and spread that knowledge to really empower women and empower women throughout the pregnancy, during the birthing experience, postpartum, and then also children. And she sits on the board of midwifery still to this day. She's the owner and creator of Birth Song Botanicals, providing nourishing herbs for women during pregnancy, after pregnancy, for their children, for menstruation, and so all across the board and different levels of that. And you can actually catch her live on Friday, or actually, Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, to get midwifery tips and wisdom through her Apothecary Wisdom talking points there. And she also has blogs that you can find her. I'm sure we'll talk about that, and I'll include those in the links and everything. And you can also catch her live every Friday at 10 a.m. where she does live Qigong sessions via Zoom. So Maria, I am just so excited to have you here today and to have you share your wisdom and your knowledge with everyone. So Maria.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
so
you.
Let's just hear about you. How did you get started, and then the evolution of how you were able to offer the herbs now that you offer as well?
Right. So midwifery has been a part of my life my entire life. Like, I grew up in Northern California, where all my peers were born at home, and my mom was friends with the midwife, and she had gorgeous red hair like you did.
Oh, cool.
And so I knew midwives my whole life, and all my peers were born at home. And then when we moved from California to Arkansas, I moved right down the street from another midwife, and her children. I was different ages of her children, but she had a handful of children. And so I just kind of got to know her, and I wasn't really clear, like, in the real, like, brass tacks of what she did. Like, I didn't know the actual job that she did, but I saw her as a leader in the community, and I saw her as a safe place. And her home was set up with these beautiful libraries and artwork for women, and these families would come. And she just seemed like the most healthy, wholesome person in our community. And so I remember being a teenager being like, I'm going to be like her when I grow up. And I didn't quite know, like, her job exactly. And then when I was in, the time that we all get to in our lives of who am I, where am I going, what am I doing, what am I going to commit to, I had, like, some choices to make, and I was a little uncertain. So I decided to take a hike. And so I hiked from Oklahoma to Arkansas. It was 256 miles. The point of the hike was to not come home until I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt what I could commit the rest of my life to, right? With dignity and purpose and meaning. And so I went on that hike, and at the first part of it was very challenging and heavy. And, eventually I reached the day pretty deep in. I was out there for over a month, so pretty deep in near the end. I remember just like feeling like oh my gosh, what have I done? It's way too far I can't just go home. I haven't figured it out. This is too heavy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm at my wit's end, right? And I dropped the backpack down and I cried and put my feet into the water and was just sitting there like, oh, I don't know, like my low point. And then it's like I heard it really clear. You're a midwife. You're a midwife. Pick up your backpack, put your shoes on, and go home. You're a
Oh,
midwife. And I'm like, I'm a midwife? And I felt so much energy. I legit like jogged up the hill, like was,
no.
before I couldn't even take another step, and so then, my, you think I would just go right over to that lady's house and be like, I'm going to be a midwife. But of course I took the long route. I tend to take the scenic route.
Yes,
And
I like
I
that.
ended up thinking, oh, I'm going to be a traditional midwife and I'm going to learn from the indigenous women in Central America.
Ooh.
So I went to Central America and I lived 3 years in Central America, learning to speak Spanish and learning myself how to rely on my intuition, how to rely on my wits and my knowing and my courage and who I am and what I care about, and seeing the atrocities to women and poverty and children, and how I can't just go around traveling and looking at the world. Now it's time for me to actually go home and go to work. And so when I came home, I came to Northwest Arkansas because I knew there was a midwife up here that I met years before in a sweat lodge. Like I went my first fast ever years before I was with the original midwife that I told you. I went with her family to a women's empowerment retreat. And I
Right.
was like 20 years old probably. And I fasted for my first time and was at this women's empowerment retreat. And it was time to go into the lodge, and I looked in the lodge and the lodge was full. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to go. And then this one woman said, no, I want you, you're supposed to be in here. There's space for you. And so they all scooted over. And that woman that said, no, you're supposed to be in here, years later became my mentor,
Uh,
midwife, here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So that's why I came here, because she was here. And then actually at the time, I didn't even know it was her until I had already applied to go to the school and was at the school. And I was like, wow, you just seem really familiar. Do we know each other? And then that's when we realized that's who she was. So then I ended up going to her school and going to births with her, and I earned my, so I was her apprentice, and I was also an academic student at the midwifery school. It's called ARMS, Arkansas Midwife School and Services. So I graduated there, and I completed all my training in 2004. At the very end of, I finished school, and I had a few months, and then I was pregnant at the very end of school, and I ended up giving birth outside,
oh my gosh.
and I had a pool of water. It was really awesome. A pool of water outside, and my husband caught the baby, and then a month later, it was my midwifery exam. So I had my baby in my sling and breastfeeding, and I was midwifery exam, and then I did
Yes.
really well on it, and then I became a licensed midwife, and then I just started attending births.
Oh,
And I've been doing that, like I said, for 17 years. And I felt so committed and so strong and steadfast in my practice in midwifery, and just as clear and as strong as the words were that came to me that said, you're a midwife, go get up and go do the work. Those were the same clarity. As much as I didn't understand, it was the same thing of saying, stop doing that now. You're fine. You've given one-on-one care to hundreds of women. It's time for you to like branch out and reach out and grow up and increase your sphere of influence and your sphere of like holding. You can hold more now rather than a few people at a time. You can hold more now. And so even though it does still feel like it's a transition, my herb company was already established. Birdsong Botanicals was already established. That all came from my work as a midwife. Every product that I've made comes from my work one-on-one with clients or with my own child. And so it's like, it didn't just come out of a recipe book. It came from real life experience. And so though Birdsong Botanicals was existing, but I could see it needed me more. And so now I'm called to show up and teach. And so I teach, like I said, apothecary wisdom every week.
right.
And then, but I really miss that one transformative and deep relationship experience that you have with people when they're going through birth. And I really miss seeing women when they go from that like uncertain woman before they have a baby, and they ask 1,000 questions and they have a lot of fear, and then afterwards they give birth, and then they come to the childbirth class and they're sharing their birth experience, and they're sitting with authority and with expert, and they're sitting there encouraging the other women. I love seeing that transformation. And I love seeing men. Before midwifery, I never had such a deep respect for men, how they are protective and compassionate and understanding and fully present. And they're so tender with their babies, and so tender and supportive for their partners, and they're just as involved. And the transformation from a boy to a man to a father, to get to see that is just exquisite. And so those are the things that I miss by not attending birth. And also just that birth, that moment of birth when the baby's being born, and that's really highlight. So your YouTube channel, my Apothecary Wisdom channel, I don't have that experience yet of that transformation. And so I'm such a people person that I had to start teaching Qigong. And so Qigong is such an energetic exchange, where you exchange energy with the earth and with heavens and with your body and with your breath and with your mind and with other people. And so currently in COVID, I'm doing it on Zoom, and that's cool. But I also teach it live, and that's my interaction with people. And like then some of my new clients that I teach Qigong to are women. Obviously I have a group that's just for women, but I also teach it to a bunch of veterans at the VA hospital, and they're like older men that have been to war, but they have the deep transformative experiences too. And they actually, you can really see the rigid, rough soldier, wounded soldier man become soft and open and breathe and embrace something. Like before he would never use the word chi, but now he's like, I'm going to Qigong.
I have it. I have my chi. I'm going for my chi.
Yeah, and they're really like, so I'm kind of becoming a midwife to the herbs, bringing the herbs into the community, and I'm being a midwife to Qigong, bringing Qigong to the community.
Oh.
So that's where I am now, where I started and now where I am at.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So let's rewind back into the midwifery right now. So obviously you've done this for 17 years, right? So you know other people in the area. For those of us women like myself, personally, I haven't birthed yet, but I want to have exactly what you're describing. Like you're the exact person that I would love to have in my tribe of women to empower and to really uplift and ready the body for that birth experience, for it to go just as it needs to be guided. So could you also still refer people to midwives that they can have one-on-one and everything like that?
Absolutely. Like I get emails every week. Hey, will you be my midwife? And I'm referring. I should get a referral fee, actually.
Yeah, might as well.
Anyways, no, I have a handful of midwives that are in Northwest Arkansas and that I refer to. And then if anybody wants to go anywhere in Arkansas, if you go to the website, it's the health department website. It's called healthyarkansas.gov. And then search midwives. There'll be a whole list of all the licensed midwives in the state.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And these are midwives
and then,
across the board, as far as those that are definitely, they will do at-home births, and then ones that can transition if they needed to, but definitely at-home birth, because I know there's...
Yes, everybody that's listed on that list is considered a licensed midwife or a certified professional midwife. That means they only work in home birth capacity.
Okay.
So the women that go to the women that work in the hospital, those midwives are called certified nurse midwives. Certified nurse midwives give them, let's break this down. There are several different types of midwives. The confusion is we all use the term midwife. None of us are going to let go of the term midwife, right? But we have very different education paths and very different scopes of practice. Okay, we'll start over here so you can see. Certified nurse midwife, they have gone to the Standard University, and then they have a master's degree in midwifery, and they can work in birth centers or hospitals. Some of them do home births, but that's a smaller population of certified nurse midwives.
Okay.
They still work with healthy, low-risk women, and they work in collaboration, and actually in the hierarchy, they work underneath an obstetrician. So the obstetrician, when anything becomes high risk, they communicate and they transfer to the obstetrician. Certified nurse midwives technically are the most educated, right?
Right.
They tend to work, like I said, in the hospital, so they also have the most parameters wrapped around them, right? They don't get to have their little magic midwife wand and give you the birth you want because you're you. They don't get to do that. They work in a hospital full of a bunch of policies, and they have to follow those policies or they don't have a job.
Yeah.
And so that's how it goes. And so if you're going to choose a certified nurse midwife and you want something special and you want a relationship with somebody, then it's really important that you have a doula, because the doula is then the one that you create the relationship with. Your primary relationship is with yourself and with your partner and your baby. And then you have a doula, because that, if you're choosing a birth center birth or a hospital birth, particularly a birth center birth that has multiple midwives in it, you don't know which midwife you're going to get. And if you do have to transport to a hospital and that's a busy birth center, that midwife may or may not get to go with you to the hospital, right? And she doesn't want to abandon you, but she might have to. It's not abandoned, but she might not be able to go with you. So at least if you have a doula, you have one point person that you can establish your emotional relationship with.
Yeah.
And then you have your professional relationship with the midwife. And then you have this full care with a certified nurse midwife. That's what I would recommend. Right. Now, if you're going to choose a home birth, then you choose a licensed midwife. Another term for it is certified professional midwife.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of different paths to the professionalization of this midwife. Some of them are apprentice trained. That means they didn't go to an academic school, but there was a test that has all the skills, and extensive test. It's an 8-hour exam, all the skills and all the questions, and they have to pass the test, and they have to prove the number of births they went to and prove all their skills, and everything has to be signed off. So there's a procedure for that.
Yeah.
There are other women that go to an academic school. That's what I went to. I went to a physical brick and mortar school, and I had my apprenticeship at the same time. They overlapped. And then there's other women that go to an online school and they have their apprenticeship. So a certified professional midwife may have a college degree, but she's going to have training and skills specific to her art and her practice and her science of midwifery, right? Yeah. And she's passed an exam. If she's a certified professional midwife, she passed a local level exam, and she passed a national level. So I'm a national and internationally licensed midwife because I have the certified professional certification. However, I do want to say something. I said something not exactly right. I said she passed a local test and a national. That's true for Arkansas. Not every state in the United States is legal. Like Oklahoma is illegal, meaning there's not a law. So there's no test for them to take in Oklahoma. Missouri just became legal. There are states like in Illinois, and I used to have them all memorized in my head, that it's illegal to practice midwifery. Like if you go to a birth and something happens in Arkansas, you go to the birth and something happens and you have to transport, and maybe there's not maybe there's a poor outcome. Right. What happens in Arkansas is you would go on trial, essentially. You'd go down and prove your case, and then you would be reprimanded. Maybe you would have your license removed, or you would go through the policies to maintain your license. If you practice midwifery in one of those illegal states, it's a felony, and they kick down your door and you go to jail. No. So it's a huge, I'm not lying, that's real problem, and that is what we need to change that. So people, listeners, we need to be a part of the ones that make midwifery a legal, safe, professional, heart-led service to women all over the United States and all over the world. Like, it is inconceivable. It's still breaks my heart to know that that is not an option in all of our states. And then there's one last group.
Briefly, but yeah, I was just saying, I heard about that briefly. I'm blanking on her name right now, but another sweet, she helps with birth classes and stuff like that. She's not a midwife, but she kind of gave me insight on the dynamics, because where we're located, we're so close to Oklahoma and Missouri. And it's like, you know, it's totally different state by state. We know that with all professions, it's totally like that with chiropractic as well. I mean, like, as far as the state licensure, blah, blah, blah. But gosh, I mean, that is so disturbing. It's so upsetting that, like, you can have somebody that's dedicated like yourself to want to help this woman through this amazing, beautiful experience. And then this same woman can, like, have her livelihood taken away, the midwife taking her livelihood taken away, if something were to just be a little bit different, and then she were to take it to the hospital, and then now the politics comes in and slams that woman down. And now she can't, even though she has all this experience and this beauty and this wisdom to share with these new moms, or continued moms, you know, various multiples, that they can be taken away. It's just, I'm not surprised, but yes. So I'm just like, yes, we got to stand up to support the midwives, but the midwives to support the women that want to have a natural birth and have an at-home birth, you know, have the birth experience that they deserve.
It's really support our future and our future generations, right?
Yeah.
There's one other category of midwife that I want to bring up, because we talked about legality, and you talked about all the states are a little bit different. Like, Oklahoma is a gray state, and Missouri is legal, and you can do VBACs in Missouri, but then Arkansas is legal, but you can't do VBACs in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then there's some states that are completely illegal. And so there's this other group of midwives, and they're unlicensed, right? And so they kind of fit and fill some needs, but then they also create a little, like, controversy and turmoil in the birth world, right? Because they don't fit into a box neatly, right? So you don't really know how they were educated. You don't really know how they were trained or what their certifications are, because they don't have certification process or the transport process or all these things. There's a lot of grayness to them. At the same time, why in the state of Arkansas would you ever even hire an unlicensed midwife when you could hire a licensed midwife? Right? So you're like, why is it even an issue in Arkansas? Well, it's an issue in Arkansas because a licensed midwife in Arkansas cannot attend a VBAC or a twin or a breech, right?
Really?
But an unlicensed midwife has no rules, so she could do it. So in some ways, by us not having accurate laws that really protect the practice and profession of midwifery, that ultimately protects the safety of mothers and babies, since our laws are skewed and they're political, like you said, you have these women that are super educated, the certified nurse midwives, that can't do twins, breeches, or VBACs. Some of them can do VBACs, but they have parameters. And then you have this other middle of the road educated woman that can't do that either. And then you have this one that you may not be educated in the same ways as these other women are, and they have the highest risk births. Like, they can do the ones with the most risk.
Right.
So it's a very controversial issue about midwifery and the legalization. So we need to have accurate laws that reflect the true scope of practice as midwives. And I understand completely why when someone says, oh, you're a midwife, so what kind of midwife are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know why you say that, because you don't know if I work in a hospital, or if I'm licensed, or if I'm a member of a church and I'm going to pray about it, or I'm going to, like, bring an oxygen tank and have a transport plan, like,
and then hook you up to IV, because, you know, your body doesn't produce its own things, and then be quick to push you into making decisions because your blood pressure is too high. So I think you're at risk, but really the reality is I'm stressing you out, you know, because and that's the beauty of why this is so important. I'm so, like, honored to be, like, talking to you right now to share this, and, like, being in the local community and obviously being on the board as well, to, like, know the dichotomy and the dynamics across, like, different states, because what's incredible is like it's our freedom to choose. It should be our freedom to choose what kind of birth experience that we want, and but also to have the safety of why you have a midwife with you, to have the safety and the love. And then obviously we understand the importance of having a doula for emotional support, but that midwife, if they're not a nurse practitioner or a nurse practicing midwife, clearly that midwife has the ability to be that emotional support as well, right? And that's what it sounds like. But
absolutely.
So what we're getting at with that is like, it's literally a matter of like these freedoms that are going to be taken away. And what it just struck me is that it's the same thing happens in the chiropractic world, like not all chiropractors are the same, right? And with that, I don't want to take over this because I want to hear more with you, but like it's the same concept in like all professions. Like everybody thinks like chiropractors, head, neck, and back pain doctors, but then there's like we're like neurologically based chiropractors, philosophically based chiropractors, you know what I mean? That aren't trying to include drugs or pharmacy and are not trying to get involved in Western medicine. We're just trying to empower the body naturally. And it's like the same is going on in midwifery with that too. And that it skews it. And as if it's not already hard enough, because the average consumer, whenever they hear the word midwife, they're automatically assuming, well, that means I'm going to be more natural, right? Like, I mean, like and obviously we don't think that, but like for the average consumer, like even people I have that come into the office, they're like, oh, well, I've got a midwife through the hospital. And it's like, but you don't know if that's going to be your midwife when the day actually comes. Right.
And she has hospital protocols, and hospital protocols are limited by time frames. The number, I feel like the lack of a better word, the worst intervention or the worst like tool that's been brought into birth is this clock. It's the clock. As soon as you go into labor, the time clock starts ticking, right?
Yes.
And once you enter the hospital, that clock is on you. And that midwife has to work within the clock. Even if she has a heart of gold and wants to give you everything she can, it's the clock, right?
It's so true. And so many, I mean, I'll just share like with some of the women we've had in our practice, and my heart just like spills for them because they're like, I'm ready. They're like, they got the mindset, but the fear, funny enough, like with what's happening right now, but the fear is so strong that just pulsates in the body, and they don't have like other support to grab onto when they get into the hospital instantly. I mean, we had a woman, like her blood pressure was high because they made her think the whole time something was wrong with her. And they automatically wanted to give her the Pitocin right away and like essentially like shoved it in her mouth for her to take it, for her to start to go into contractions. And, without going, I mean, obviously I want to hear you tell the story at some point, but like force things upon her because she needed to go along the timeline. And then she didn't want to have an epidural because she wanted to try to breathe through and go through it without she wanted to feel it, right? And the epidural's going to numb her. They were like getting on her, making her feel horrible because she was denying the epidural. And it's like, just like you're saying, there could be a midwife in there with the heart of gold, but because she's locked in these parameters, there's got to be protection for her licensure. And then there's going to be protection for the hospital. And I get it, like politically wise, but then now this mom, first time mom, second time mom, oh my gosh, like this experience is turning into like chaos, absolute scare and fear and chaos. And now you're getting things injected into you that you don't want to. And now this whole birth experience is just thrown out the window.
Exactly. And then we wonder why people have so much postpartum depression or just depression in general. And why we should be, so happy and so grateful that our baby was born and everything was safe. Like safe is like the bottom line, right? The bottom safety isn't like
it's inherent. It's like in there.
We're going for like safety and a whole and complete empowered mother and baby dyad where the mom and baby are not separated, and the woman and the partner, they feel like complete and they feel uplifted versus like scattered and fragmented and unsure what happened and railroaded and taken over. And even though they had they had a safe birth, they still feel traumatized.
Totally.
It happens all day, every day. Each day, like there's a little piece of paper I have from the midwifery school. It says, on the day you were born, 300,000 other women are giving birth on the same day. Wow. What we're talking about is the massive population. Those beautiful, sweet little home births outside that happen. When I started midwifery school, the population that had home births in the United States was less than 1%. That was in 2000, right? And now the population, because of the internet and because of all these young women on social media and the internet and finding their voice and getting empowered, home birth is now 3 to 4%. That is actually an exponential growth. That is wonderful. But when you think about the population, 3 to 4% of the population are having home births. So that means whatever 96% is having a hospital birth. And what you just said happens constantly all day, every day, not even just in the United States, but it's even worse in other countries.
Yeah. And that is why it's like putting this information out here and sharing this through means what we're doing right now, and through how you're like, you felt your calling that I want to share this with more people. Nothing is to scare. It's to empower and say, like, you have choice and you have support. You have the support, right? And you
can have the birth you want. If you have clear core values about what the type of birth is that you want, not on what your family wants, your husband wants, your mom wants, your church wants. That's a real hard thing for us to navigate, right, in our life. How do I be true to myself and kind of true to my culture? Yeah. I mean, we all kind of have to figure that out. And so finding your core values, and then finding somebody, a care provider, that can offer you those core values and help you get those goals, because inevitably during pregnancy, you're going to have a question. Am I making the right decision? Is my baby okay? Am I being selfish? I hear this all the time. I want to have a home birth because that's what I want, but I'm going to be selfish. And that's why I'm like, no, that's called responsibility. That's self-love. If you take care of yourself and love yourself and choose decisions that are uplifting to your body, mind, and soul, it will be good for your baby. It will be good for your partnership. It'll be good for your marriage. It'll be good for your overall health. It'll be good for your menstruation. It'll be good for the whole.
Our hormones.
Not being selfish. You're doing the right thing that takes a lot of courage, right? You're being brave.
Oh my gosh.
You're being a healer and a healing presence.
Life-giving, clearly, right? Oh, wow.
So to see my stuff, but it's really like for the people that can hear that message, that they may not have me sitting with them, but they know, like, I believe in them, and I know that the birth that they're wanting is available to them, but they're going to have to do the work of it. And that's another thing. Home birth requires personal responsibility. If you just evaluate yourself and you really are honestly the person that feels way more comfortable having somebody else do it for you, choose a hospital birth.
Right.
But if you want to do it, to feel it, to experience, to grow, to have that experience, it's your responsibility to find the right people, to eat, to move, to connect with your body, connect with your baby, be prepared, and not push that responsibility off on somebody else.
Yes.
Because as soon as you do that, you've lost it. And it doesn't mean you have to be separate or isolated or lonely. It just means that you have deep roots in your knowing, and you know how to get the support you need.
I love what you said. That personal responsibility is exactly what we need to do with our health. Like, in general, our health and our lives, clearly in birthing and every element of our life, and definitely in health, like right now. And it should all along, we've always had the control, and we should have always have had the personal responsibility of our health. But now with what's going on, like in current day status, it's like, here's your wake up call. Like, take the personal responsibility to make choices, to sit down with yourself and be present and meditate on it, pray on it, journal on it, what it is. To how do you really want to spend your time? How do you want to feel in your body, right? And like we have the control of what we're putting in our mouth. We have the control of the water that we're drinking or we're not drinking, right? And take that personal responsibility with your health and with every other element of your life, rather than exactly what you're saying, than pushing it on other people. And that's what we've done for far too long. And I hate to say this, but we've done far too long with mainstream medicine, which is why it's led to all the chronic diseases and conditions that are totally preventable that we see today, because we've lost taking that personal responsibility. And we've lost that trust in our own innate being.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel like I do as a midwife a lot of times, is just mirror back, reflect back, ask questions in a way to get them to think. That's like an open-ended question to get them to think, to find their own answer. And then when they say like, I want to do this, then I mirror it back to them. Okay, if you want to do it, what steps are you going to take to do it? Like how? Let me help you with the practicalities now. And let's also make sure you don't have some pie in the sky, like, I'm going to give birth out in the creek. And, you know, I don't know. Some people have some ideas and you're like, okay, so, well, after you push the placenta out, you're going to have to walk quite a ways and you're going to lose a couple cups. So you have to explain the reality of the situation. So have it rooted in practicality, and then also expanded in this like possibility of this beauty of this birth experience that you want. And so, and also, you know, back to the choosing your right care provider, you know, when you are meeting a person, you're analyzing if this is the right care provider for you. And then, or if you're in a hospital setting and you're not quite sure like who it's going to be, you might like this midwife, or you might like this doctor, but then they're partners. You don't like these other ones. And when they go on call. And so what I'm trying to say is, a lot of times people think, oh, it's just going to be one day. I don't like that person. It's just one day. It won't be that bad. Right. But this one day of your life is one of the key, most critical days of your life that the ones that send ripples out into the rest of your like psychological wellness, health, emotional, your sexual health, all the layers, like you becoming a mother and your baby. And also not only just for you, but it's for your baby. That if you're not feeling right about it, just for this one day, it's not going to affect one day. It's going to affect everything else that follows.
Absolutely.
So you picking the right care provider is actually, I can't understate it enough. It is the most important decision you make for birth, from my perspective, being a care provider from my perspective.
And I'm right in alignment with you. And like, regardless of where our viewers or listeners at, I mean, it doesn't matter. This is too crucial. And I'm just, because I could think of other cases in the office with people that, you know, I've helped along the birth or the pregnancy process. You know, for those that are like, once they decided that they found their midwife in the hospital setting, that they now had to decide when they were going to have their baby, because now you can have your baby on the exact date at the exact time. So that way you're not having your baby on Thanksgiving, because if you have your baby on Thanksgiving, your midwife isn't available because they're going to be with their family on Thanksgiving. Right. And so I've had several people, like several women, their first time birth experience come through where they are now faced with the decision. Granted, it's always been their personal responsibility, but they now had to sit down and be faced with the decision. Should I go ahead and make my baby come early, get induced, basically? Should I get induced? I'm going to get induced because I might not have my midwife available if I go into labor during this time. So now, because it's on that clock, just like you were saying, like on the clock when they come into the hospital, but it's also on the clock outside, because women are afraid of not having the person that they want to have for their birth. So now they're going to get induced to make sure that they do have that person.
Right. And that to them is just a word. I'm going to get induced. I'm going to have my baby today. They don't understand the ramifications of forcing your body into labor and forcing your baby to be born when they're not prepared and they're not ready. Your body is this I'm trying to say the wisdom and the intelligence and the timing and the ripeness. It's like an apple. You go to an apple tree and there's an apple and you're pulling on it, right? You're pulling on this apple and like the branch comes down and you're like, you have to really force it off, right? And then when you eat the apple, it's like, it's kind of green. Yeah. Versus there's a time when you go to the tree and you look and you're like, oh, the apple already fell. It's already on the ground. Okay, so that happens spontaneously. Or you can go to it and just touch it and it falls off in your hand, right? Yeah. So if you just touch it and it falls off in your hand, it was ripe. It was going to fall anyways, or it fell off on the ground. It already happened. But when you pull on that, not only do you hurt the tree, but you get the apple prematurely. And so what I'm trying to say, in the birth world, you might have, you know, just more pain, and you might have a baby that's in distress that needs to spend time in the NICU. And so once the baby goes in the, even has to spend more time in the nursery or in the NICU, that means they're separated from you. That means there's so many other ripples out of layers of stress and, lack of a better word, trauma that's happening to you and the baby that are not in alignment with normal physiological birth. Is why you hired a midwife in the first place. Inductions, 50% of inductions for first-time moms in a cesarean section. So 2 women, first-time moms, walk in to get induced. One's going to have a C-section just because she was induced. That's major abdominal surgery, right? And people don't quite understand the fullness of the ramifications of that. So if you give birth on Thanksgiving, be grateful. Right?
Like, oh, I've got the baby. It's, oh my gosh, you just hit on some other things right there. I'm just like, oh, I'm so in love right now. Like talking about this, like, oh, what was it? First of all, the analogy, gosh, how beautiful of an analogy right there. You just made me think about it with avocados right now. Like we eat a crap ton of avocados. We bought like 10 avocados in one bag, and just now, like 2 weeks later, are the avocados ripe for us to eat right now? And it's like that analogy you gave with the apple, of the ripeness and having the baby, and saying that at the timing of which, like, when we talk about in chiropractic, we're always like, the first trauma, thoughts, toxins, and traumas, we talk about them, the 3 T's, the first trauma comes from birth.
Absolutely.
Most of the time. It comes
and I even really think it comes from even before birth, because your mother's birth and her mother's birth and her, you know what I mean? Like, but yes, absolutely.
That ripple effect. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, how can we help to change the generations moving forward? And that can happen with that mom, that first time mom, or even the second time, for that being, or whether it's a boy or girl being born, for the next, talk about generational change, right? Beautiful. And then just real quick on the statistics, on the stats. I mean, last I knew, I mean, in New York City, I mean, their goal, and I can't remember which hospital, like their goal is to have they want to have C-sections so they can plan every single one of the births. It's crazy.
It's just like my heart goes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just crazy, but this is just across the board. So, I mean, and it's not saying, and for some people, just like you said, if that's what they want, that's what they want. But if they don't know any better, this is where we've got to do our homework and take that personal responsibility, just like what you're saying with that. And that personal responsibility is beautiful because it has a ripple effect in so many other areas of your life and generations. Oh my gosh, this is just, I want to go so much more in depth with that, but I want to talk a little bit how now the evolution into your apothecary wisdom as well. So clearly, we can go on about all the different elements of the birthing process, and then how to create it beautiful. And you can have it any way, shape, or form. And, you know, delayed cord clamping, which that is really hard to get in the hospital. And, you know, even utilizing the placenta later for providing more nourishment for the baby and for yourself, because there's still more blood in there. I mean, gosh, I probably want to do another conversation, maybe talking about that too. So that way I can let you go into, going into the apothecary wisdom. So let's go into that. So with these herbs and these tinctures and everything like that, obviously these are from the earth, right? Planet Earth, right? So how did you come up with these, and how did you know about this? Was this from your time in Central America that you learned about these, or?
Well, I grew up in Northern California out in the woods. So I thought I was a medicine maker because I would like grind up nuts and berries and stuff. And, I don't know, I had this like little fantasy that I was going to grow up and be a Native American because they make medicine, right? I don't know. I didn't become a Native American, but obviously. But the point is, like, I always thought I always liked making medicine, and I just felt like I felt connected to the plants. And so in my experience in Central America, I learned more. You could just see in the markets, like so many people rely on herbs as like their primary healthcare. And then when I came home and I started my midwifery schools, when I started like a more formal education about herbs, specifically herbs for women and birth and postpartum and breastfeeding. And so my mentors who taught me primarily about the value of postpartum herb baths and herbs to help with cramping and to help bring in more milk and to soothe your sore nipples or with a colicky baby, or herbs to give vitamins and minerals while you're pregnant to help prepare your body to give birth. And so I learned about that in midwifery school. And then I just started making them. At first it was all in I grew a lot of the herbs, and then I would order some and I'd hand make everything. And then you started to realize, okay, there's a pattern.
Yeah.
All these women, they tend to like this tea, and these herbs are, like I said, high in vitamins and minerals. It's going to help them with anemia, help them with swelling, help them with morning sickness, and prepare their uterus to give birth. Okay, that's a pregnancy tea. Okay, I'm going to just keep making that. It's called Lady in Waiting. Okay, all these women that are struggling with breastfeeding. And like me, I struggled with breastfeeding. Like I was so prepared for my birth because I'd been to so many births before.
Right.
And I'd read every birth book there, not every, but I read a lot of birth books, and I was really prepared. And I just knew that I was going to breastfeed. Like that wasn't a question.
Totally.
Right. So then when I sat down, when I started breastfeeding, I was like, whoa, blown away that it was so hard. I had such a problem. I wasn't able to make milk. It hurt so bad. My baby cried all the time. He was losing weight. And I was just like, oh my gosh,
what's wrong with me, right?
I'm the expert. I'm the one that knows. I'm the one that everybody calls when they have a problem. And here I am in the midst of having a problem, and I don't know what to do. So what would I tell them? I'd be like, well, let's figure out some herbs. And so I started to make this stuff in the very beginning, and I'm like, oh, I'm hardcore. I can do it. And this like put all my stuff together, and whew, it was really hard to drink. And so then I tried another method and made it a little bit better. Long story short, I came up with this blend, which is now my most popular blend. It's sold like now internationally in France and Italy and Spain and the UK. And plus we ship it all over, but it's called Let There Be Milk. Right. And it helps women make a bunch of milk. And so that came directly from my dark night of the soul, sleepless nights of my crying baby losing weight. What am I going to do? Because I can't stop breastfeeding. That's where Let There Be Milk came from. Stomach soother came from my crying baby that wouldn't sleep. Stomach soother. Good night came from my clients that came through to me over and over and over, tossing and turning and restless legs, and they can't sleep. And I'm like, okay, let me make you a blend. Okay, that's called Good Night. You can take that. That'll help you sleep.
Love it.
So Nursing Nectar came from a cute little store that was in town. They were called Tots, and they were like, hey, I want you to make me a tea blend for breastfeeding moms. And then I was like, okay, it's going to taste terrible. And so then I had to try all these flavors and all these ways, and it came from, so it all came from directly from my service and act as a midwife, right? Nurtured Mother, one of my favorite herbs, that came from learning about all these women have postpartum cramps and also postpartum blues and bleeding. So you got to keep their uterus firm, but they're bleeding. So you got to keep it firm, but then they're cramping and it hurts them. Right. So you don't want it to hurt so bad, but you still need to maintain tone. Right. So I came up with a blend for that. And then postpartum herb baths, I thought I totally thought postpartum herb baths were going to be my bestseller, which they're my second bestseller. Let There Be Milk was my first bestseller, which I had no idea. It was just like me stumbling upon something. Right. But I was like certain postpartum herb baths were going to be it, because as a student midwife, student midwives, they don't earn any money. So you have to get a job, right? So I got a job being a doula. I'm a terrible doula. I tell you why I'm a terrible doula. I'm a terrible doula because doulas really support you to have whatever birth you want. And so you can just feel really good about it, right? And I'm like, I'm here to help you have a natural birth.
Yes.
Right? And so women that choose home births, they get that. But women that are choosing doulas and hospital births, they might kind of want to take things as it goes. And I'm like, okay, you're going to take it as it goes. You're going to be induced and have a C-section.
Yeah.
And so lo and behold, that's what happened. But the point, not all of them had C-section, but the point is I realized I'm a far better midwife to help you have a specific type of birth, and I can get you to a safe place if you need that next level, but I'm not the one for you to just do whatever.
Let me just
right?
shift you wherever. And
all that to say, the women that yeah, because that's you do that in your life. Yeah, do whatever, but then within a parameter. But when you go to the hospital, if you just, yes, you have a parameter, sure, switch to the right side, switch to the left side, sure, get up and go to the bathroom and change your position. But if you're just like, am I going to get the epidural or not? You're going to get the epidural, right?
Yep.
Am I going to like get induced or not? You're going to get induced. So that's what I mean by that. But all I'm just trying to say about the herb baths, I just want to go back there really quick. Home birth, the standard of practice is the woman pushes her baby out after she's stable, after the placenta's been out, after she's nursed, after she's eaten and she's ready for standing up. Then she's stable. We make an herb bath. She gets in the herb bath. Her and her baby get in the herb bath, right? Those herbs are put together specifically to help if there's any bruising or tearing, or if she got stitches. And it's really helpful for the baby because it helps dry up the umbilical cord, because all the herbs are absorbed through their skin, and it helps prevent infection, reduce swelling. Plus, it's a really beautiful bonding experience because you put the baby back into this aquatic environment. They were just in water, and if you have the lights low and have a few candles and it's quiet, those babies, they like kind of unfold and stretch out. It's really a beautiful experience. And so in my mind, when I'm preparing women for birth, I'm like, you're not done when the baby's out. You're done. You have to give birth to the placenta. When you get into that herb bath, then you can psychologically say, oh, okay, I'm done now, right? My victory, you've crossed the finish line, right? And so I've prepared them this whole time to look forward to that herb bath. And so when they get in, it's just like really delightful, right? Plus, those women, they push their babies out on their own terms, meaning they felt the sensation in their body to push, versus a woman that's numb with an epidural and hearing the sounds from other people yelling at them to push.
Do it now. Do it now.
Yeah. And so those women that hear the sounds from other people outside to push, they tend to push longer and harder and stronger than the woman at home. The woman at home that's not numb, she pushes to the point of progress and then relaxes. To the point of progress and then relaxes. The woman that's numb, that can't feel, she pushes, right?
Hard.
Yeah, and it's damaging on the tissue. So their tears are usually worse at the hospital because of this. And so also at the hospital, you hear, don't take a bath. Don't put your baby in a bath. And they're right, but they're not understanding postpartum herb baths that are made with medicinal herbs for your tissues and for preventing infection and to help you stop bleeding. This is a specific thing. It's not a Calgon take me away bath. It's not just a couple of herbs from your kitchen. It's medicine, right? And you're going to take a bath in this medicine, right? The women in the hospital that don't take the bath and they have her tear, and then the women at home that did take the bath, their healing process is exponentially different. Like the women at home, they heal rapidly comparatively to the hospital birth. Also, the woman at home has a midwife that comes and checks in on her, right? The woman at the hospital has to go home and then she's by herself, and then 6 weeks later she goes back to the hospital to be checked in on. So she not only has a worse tear, she doesn't have the appropriate medicine, and she doesn't have the support. So her vaginal tears and lacerations are far worse and far more painful and last a lot longer. So I thought postpartum herb bath was going to be my bestseller because of that reason. So it's my second bestseller. But what really keeps people up at night is wondering if they can feed their babies. And the fear of their birth is big, but their fear of not feeding their babies is even bigger. And so so I'm telling you all that to tell you a little bit of the story of how these products came into being, why they're so important, why I believe in them. It's not like I just got something and stuck my label on it. Because I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of perineums, and the ones that soak in the herb bath heal better, faster, quicker, all around better. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense to me. I'm just like, yes, that's like everything that I want to have my experience be. Like, I'm just painting the picture even more. Because I mean, I've told other women, And I just remember this because I've taken like a short midwifery, like even chiropractic college, because we're like more naturally inclined, especially the type of college you go to matters with the type of knowledge you have with chiropractic. But I was totally enthralled with learning about, I guess probably in Central America, don't they like prepare the perineum by sitting over like an herb perfusion?
They do. I did an apothecary wisdom about postpartum herb baths, and I've done one about the herbal infusion, which is called yoni steam. In Central America, it's called a baño. And they do that postpartum after you give birth. So
so it's after, it's not before. I thought it was before.
Yeah.
Birth. Okay.
It's after the placenta's been out. It's a few days after. You do 9 of them in total, ideally, because a woman will be in quarantena. Like we're in the quarantine right now. They stay in their quarantena for 40 days after birth. They don't leave the house, and they get taken care of, and people cook food for them. And their whole goal is to establish breastfeeding and to recover from birth and get to know their baby and bond with their baby. And so the midwife will come, or their mother will come and prepare these baths for her. And they don't live in a clean environment where they have a bathtub, right? So they can't go get in a bathtub. They live in an environment where they get their medicine through the steam that enters through their skin. So they make a steam tent.
That makes sense. So, okay, that's cool. So I was like, I remember learning about that, and I'm like, see, and it's like a whole ritual. It's like ritualistic and very communal.
It's a ceremony. For sure. It's because not only is a baby born, a mother is born. Even if the mother had a child before, she's a mother to this baby, and she's so transformed, right? That her old identity is faded away. Her body was really opened up. And so part of the ritual, especially in Central America, they call it an opening, and they call it a closing, a cerrada. They close her, and they wrap this scarf around her called a rebozo, and they tighten. It's like they give her a big hug, and they tighten her from the head down to her shoulders, down to her waist, down to her legs. So it's almost like she was just passed through the birth canal as a mother, and all the part of her that was just so open and so exposed and so much, those parts of her are like put back together so that she becomes this new identity as a mother that's whole and complete and contained. And then that's part of her healing process.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I want that for people that want that. I want that so bad. So
I did a video about that on Apothecary Wisdom. There is one when they go to the YouTube channel on yoni steams. I talk about that.
Oh, cool. So they'll be able to find that on there. So I have a couple of questions I'm kind of intrigued about. So what is your take on, because a lot of women who can't breastfeed, that whole, like disempowerment that they feel like I can't breastfeed, and some are a lot quicker to give up than others because they don't want to go through the pain. Like they didn't even go through the mindset with the birthing process, plus traumatized recovery, etc. But they're not able to produce the milk, and they can't breastfeed. So therefore they give up on it. But then there's other moms that are like, okay, I think it's because they have a tongue tie. Like in your world of what you've seen, I mean, is it like, obviously you could see the very obvious of when there's tongue ties, but like tongue tie, lip tie, anterior, posterior, like upper, lower, all this and that. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that's really interesting because, like I said, I've been doing midwifery for 17 years. In the very beginning, I didn't see too many ties, tongue ties, lip ties. I didn't see that, actually. Maybe not to say it didn't happen, but it was really pretty rare. Also, at the same time, we didn't have a lot of gestational diabetes when I started. And now we have a lot of gestational diabetes. I'm not saying they're related. I'm just saying like, oh, now it's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, my mind sometimes thinks it's because we drink so much water in plastic bottles that it's affecting our development, our development in utero, because it seems to be like kind of a midline developmental issue. However, near the end of my practice, I saw them all the time. And so I would send them to the chiropractor, and then I would send them to the ENT to get evaluated, and they would do all the lip stretches and the stretches. And a lot of the women, when they did the revision, it seemed to help them right away. Like their baby went from not being able to nurse to being able to nurse really effectively. And then there's some women, their baby still struggled. Like it was better, but it still struggled. And what they really weren't prepared for, and now I realize it, so I really tried to make it a big effort, was the healing process of the revision, because you actually have to get in there and massage it to keep it from not closing back up the way it was. And it's kind of a big deal on the mom. Like the mom is feeling like they're hurting the baby, you know, and so you have to psychologically get ready. When you do this revision, you're going all the way through, and it's a loving act, but you got to get in there and kind of do the hard work of the massage. It's not massage that feels good, it's therapy. And but I feel like it's actually a real thing. These ties are real, but also I think what you said was a huge part of it, of not understanding. Even though I had been to so many births, I didn't have the capacity to think that I was going to have a hard time breastfeeding. I thought if I could push this baby out, I'm going to be great. Right. And so also these women, you know, there's a whole other conversation to have. It's been coming to me a lot lately of like gender roles. We women right now, we want to be rock stars in every area of our life.
That whole masculine energy. We're like drive, right?
And I got to get back to work, and I got to make my career and have a baby and look beautiful and all these things, like all at the same time, which I think there's a season for things, right? There's times for you to be a rock star at work and time for you to be beautiful. You're always beautiful. But I'm just trying to say, we try to do it all at once. And then when we try to do it all at once, we really suffer from that, and our milk supply can go down. And especially we're trying to get back to work at 6 weeks. Some women have to literally go back to work at 6 weeks, or they're not able to, like, you know, keep the lights on. So, and then it takes several weeks, it takes several months for your milk to be established. People also think like milk supply is this like thing, like it's a status, like I have enough milk, right? It ebbs and flows every day. It ebbs and flows with what you eat, how you think, how you feel, how much hydration you have. If you just got sick, if your period came back, if you're under stress, if your baby's going through a growth spurt. I mean, there's so many variations that influence your milk supply that sometimes it's not, just because it's low right now doesn't mean it'll be low tomorrow or in a week from now.
And it's on what the baby needs, and like what's the baby fighting off, getting their immunoglobulins from it. I mean, that's just going to go into a whole other conversation, which I would love to do with you too, talking about the milk changing, and then obviously like all the natural inoculations the baby gets from going through the birth canal.
Absolutely. And that is like so important. Women don't get that either. They don't understand when they're getting their cesarean sections that they think they're just getting like out. They're getting bypassing the birth, but they're not realizing how detrimental it is to the baby's microbiome.
Like, and squeeze the head to get it pumping, and the cerebrospinal fluid, and that first inoculation. And then, you know, you go in the hospital, everybody has STDs. So we're going to give you this. We're going to put colloidal silver on, or not colloidal, on the eyes, because
nitrite,
silver nitrate on the eyes. Colloidal silver is actually good, but silver nitrate on the eyes, because, you know,
it's actually, I'm sorry, that's what they used to call it. It's called erythromycin is what they use now, just so we're being accurate. It's erythromycin. It's a little antibiotic ointment. But I know what you're saying. Yeah,
totally. No, I appreciate it. And so it's like, I mean, it just goes into so many other things. When you're bypassing Mother Nature's natural processing, there's things that get in the way, and we see it developmentally in children. You still have a perfect being, a beautiful perfection. I always see, like, even that I get to experience of adjusting a newborn baby, like every baby is perfect. They're born, they're perfect, but don't we want optimization? If we already know they got a C-section, and then let alone now when they do, like you said earlier about how, you know, they don't have this follow through to help with the, you know, their recovery, to be in tune with their body, be empowered and all this. That when they go back, it's for the babies to get their darn vaccinations. That's what they're going back for. And it's like, and that's a whole nother conversation, but I bet you can assume where I stand on the position, right? And then now it's like you're trying to connect with this baby after this traumatic experience, beautiful, but traumatic experience for you and the baby, right? And then now we're going to go ahead and inject some extra toxins inside the baby while we're still trying to figure out who they are and have this bond. And I've seen a lot of babies different afterwards, and developmentally you can't see it now, but it'll show up later, and it messes with their milestones, with those primitive reflexes. Like, I mean, let alone we know the primitive reflexes are there to get them out of the birth canal, that Perez, that spinal galant, like that's what allows them to slide against that vaginal lining to wiggle themselves out. And let alone if they're not coming out fast enough, or their head pops out really fast, their shoulders get stuck, and a stereotypical delivery obstetrician, whoever it is that's doing it, would probably pop the clavicle, because it can reconnect real close. And it sounds barbaric as we talk about it, but that's what happens. It happens all the time. Yeah, the baby.
Or cut an episiotomy.
Yep, episiotomy. Let's go ahead and cut you, but at least it's a straight line, women, right? It's a straight line because but then now you're extra sore because you were cut even more. Oh my gosh, yeah. This has just been absolutely amazing. And then, we'll just briefly go on it so that way we can try to, I don't even want to cut this short. I want to keep talking even more, but for people to be able to take this in different waves and everything like that. So obviously they can find you on the website for the botanicals, which is a Birth Song Botanicals, plural with an S at the end.com, right?
Yes.
Jump on there, and then all of these different amazing products that you're talking about that they can have access to, but then they can also get information. You have a blog where you're constantly sharing information on that page as well. Then you're also you have a YouTube channel where you're continuously sharing information, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and then some, I'm sure, right? And what's the YouTube channel that you're on?
It's called Birth Song Botanicals.
Perfect. So Birth Song Botanicals. You do lives every Thursday at 12 p.m., which I'm in between my lunchtime while I'm in the practice, I want to tune in and check that out as well. And so they can find the Facebook page with that.
Yes. And the same name, Birth Song Botanicals Facebook page.
Perfect. And then now also Qigong, which you're doing, that's a Zoom call, and there's probably a different way to access that if they have interest.
Sure. Right? So that's on my sister website. It's a brand new, simple website, and it's called Path with Harmony.
Path with Harmony. Okay.
And then that will tell you a little bit about who I am, a little bit about what Qigong is, and then how to sign up for the class, how to join the class. And then after the class, there's always a recording so they can follow along later.
Oh, this has been so incredible, Maria. I am just this is divine timing always. I'm so glad to have been able to talk to you and us talk beforehand, get to know a little bit more about each other and know about you. And there's so many more conversations and questions that I have. And actually, let me go ahead and end with, let me ask them one question, because I know I have this, because I already know that when my time comes, I want to have at home or outdoor birth. I didn't even think about having outdoor, but I want to have my new home and have my beautiful outside scenery and everything. With an at-home birth, how does the birth certificate come into play with that? Because in my mind, it's like the hospital writes it, and I'm like, would I have to then go to the hospital? I don't want to go in the hospital at all. So how do you get the birth certificate?
So if you hire a licensed midwife or a certified professional midwife, then you will, on your postpartum visit, so she'll come and visit with you the next day. Okay. And then you'll sit down and she'll be asking you a bunch of questions and she'll fill out this birth certificate form, this paper form of all the information for your birth certificate. And then when she makes it back to the office, plug it in, her assistant will plug it into the computer, and there's a website, vital statistics website through the health department. And then once it's plugged in, then all you have to do is go to the website and request a copy. And then your social security card will come in the mail about 6 weeks later, and your birth certificate will come in the mail. You pay a fee. It's like $20 or something.
Right. Beautiful. It's little things like that I'd be like, how would you know? But again, you would know, you would share that with us as long as we form that relationship early on, which hopefully, and that's obviously sooner the better, right?
That's true. So in my practice, I always charged a global fee. The fee didn't change depending on when you started care. So if you came in at 6 weeks or if you came in at 28 weeks, the fee was the same, right? Mm-hmm. And I did that on purpose because I want you to come in as early as possible, just so even if we're not doing stuff, we're getting clear of who are you? What are your core values of birth? What are your expectations of me? What are your, what crazy thing did you just read on the internet that is not true? What thing did you just read on the internet that totally inspired you? And we're like, yes, let's go with that, right? What book should you be reading right now? What food should you be eating? you just start to slowly but surely, because you can't flood them all at once, right? You kind of got to saturate so they can like grow and learn and absorb and integrate and then ask their next question. And so these visits, we always had visits that were an hour long. And mainly, most of it was the talking, about 30 minutes of talking. And then the other 30 minutes were checking your vitals and listening to the baby. And then we can just continue that conversation throughout. And so I'm saying that to say go earlier than later. Also, because from a midwife perspective, some people think that they're going to come in last minute and they're going to save some money and it'll be easy. It's not easier on the midwife in any way, shape, form, or fashion for somebody to come at the very end and then not know what's going on and then all of a sudden want some groovy home birth that requires all this foreplanning, all this personal responsibility, which was not set in stone. And then this midwife is supposed to somehow figure it out and get all the paperwork and all the lab tests, and that she has all these responsibilities to do too, plus teach your classes at the last minute. There's no way you're going to get the best of her if you just suddenly drop something off at the last minute and expect her to just like perform. Right? Yeah. So it's like, as a midwife, I'm like, after a certain time, I'm not going to go to your birth because I just don't have the time to catch you up to speed.
Right. Yeah. And you can't give the full delivery of what you have to offer. And I'm so glad you made that point too, because I see that same thing happen with my women that were already planning on having it in a hospital. And they're already like you said, 28 weeks, 26, 27, 28 weeks pregnant. And they're like, I'm like, have you found your midwife yet? You know, like, cause I always tiptoe, cause that's not like, I'm not forcing anything on anybody, but they still haven't, maybe they just decided who their midwife, like who they wanted to have whenever they were to be expecting to have their child. Right. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like rushing, obviously, when you like you're saying for you, but then think about it even more when they're like rushing, they didn't even take the time to look for it. They didn't, how do I say this? It's basically, they weren't prepared until now I'm going to have the baby like any number of weeks from now. And now I feel like I need to make all these decisions where those decisions should have already been made before then.
Right. I mean, and really not to boil it down to this, but like you said, you have a Subaru Outback or some car or something. Yeah. Like you probably researched that car. Do I get the Outback or do I get the RAV4? You like researched your car or which TV or which computer you're going to buy way more than researching what midwife you're going to hire, right? And then a lot of women will pick a midwife because their girlfriend had a midwife, right? They had that same one, but they don't even really see eye to eye with their, so I guess what I'm trying to say is they spend more time buying appliances and buying vehicles than they do because they don't fully understand the ramifications of how essential it is that they are a human being, but they're a soul and they're a spirit and they have emotions and feelings and stuff. And our lives continue on, and the decisions you make right here, you probably still would have had a cute little, perfect little, sweet little, beautiful life if you drove a RAV4 or if you drove a Subaru Outback. But who you choose to be at your birth really influences how you're going to show up in the world later, right? Yes. So what I'm trying to say is I'm just chiming in and agreeing with what you're saying. Take your time. So on my website, when people come to me and they say, hey, I want you to be a midwife. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Here, I'm going to refer you to these other midwives. Here, I'm also going to give you a PDF. And this PDF has 50 questions that you could be asking your potential midwife. And then another PDF for doulas. So you can be asking your midwife or your doctor these questions. And a lot of times they're questions, it's your first baby. You don't even know what questions to ask, right? And so at least I give you like a template of questions to ask. So then you can even ask yourself, how important is this question to me?
Yes. Oh, right? Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. And how can people contact you for that reason?
So when they go to my website, there's a contact page. It says contact first, and it'll say contact, and then they'll say, hey, I want to know about midwifery, and then I'll just send them that. Or also embedded in like a lot of my blogs, there'll be a little sign up form that says PDF, 50 questions to ask your potential midwife. So it's embedded in my blog. I don't know. You're just going to have to look for it, or you just contact me on the website.
Oh, beautiful. Because I know I'm going to want to be reaching out to you, and then I know others are going to want to be reaching out to. So sorry, but also yay at the same time. You're going to be probably getting a flood of more people coming and asking, but awesome. And so, oh my gosh, it's been so beautiful. You're such a wealth of wisdom and guidance and knowledge. And I definitely want to have communication again, talking about even more things and more specifics. But I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Are there any last things you'd like to share with our viewers or our listeners before we close out here?
You know, I just want to say thank you to you for the service that you're doing, and that how you're caring for women and caring for yourself, and you know, being a pillar in this community. And I just really, to all of our listeners, just remember that, you know, you can have a beautiful birth, and birth can really be, you know, a transformative, safe, expansive experience. And and I just want you to believe in that. I just want you to believe in yourself, and in your ability to give birth, and your ability to nurse your baby. And if things aren't going right, reach out and get support. You do. And that's the other thing. Don't do it alone. Just to be independent and personal responsible does not mean alone and lonely. And you're in such a transformative place when you're giving birth. And some women really kind of get stuck in their alone, in their fear of being alone. And so I just want to reach out to you, like, don't stay there for long.
Right.
Get help.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Maria. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, all our listeners and our viewers, we'll include these in the notes. We'll include these on Facebook, and also include information whenever this goes live on the podcast and everything. So clearly reach out to her. She's a wealth of information. And again, Maria, thank you. And for all of our listeners, until next time, make sure to stay tuned for all of our other Ignite Mind, Body, and Spirit health and wellness and fitness relations, as we talk about those in the local area, and also how it can help influence you and your family to reach higher levels of health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.